Okay. Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to call this meeting of the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality to order. Today is Wednesday, February 7th, 2024. The time is 9:30 a.m. With us today are Commissioners Emily Lindley and Bobby Janecka, as well as our General Counsel, Mary Smith, and I'm John Neerman. Registration has now closed, but if you'd like to address the Commission on a particular item, please visit our registration table out front or email agenda@tceq.texas.gov with your name, your affiliation, and the item that you'd like to speak on, and we will do our best to accommodate that request. For those who are addressing the Commission, please wait until our General Counsel or I indicate that it's your turn, and we will inform you of your time limit. Thank you all for being present today. Ms. Smith, please call the first item.
Item number 1 is the consideration of the ALJ's proposal for decision and proposed order concerning the application by R040063LP for new TIPD's permit number WQ00160080001. The order for oral argument will be the applicant, the protestant, the ED, and then OPIC. Each party will have 5 minutes of oral argument time. The applicant may save time for rebuttal as it bears the burden of proof on the application. And I believe we have Peter Gregg for the applicant.
Good morning, Mr. Gregg.
Good morning, Chairman Peter Gregg.
And Mr. Gregg, I'm not sure that we've got your mic. You want to press that push button until you get a green light?
Chairman, is that better?
There we go. We got you.
Okay, good morning to everyone. Again, Peter Gregg with Gregg Law PC representing the applicant in this matter. We believe this PFD was properly issued. It's supported not only by the applicant, but also commission staff as well as OPIC. While challenge was made to the application, we believe the application was properly put before the commission. The administrative law judge properly considered all of the issues, and again, the ALJ made the correct decision in her recommendation. So we are happy to address any questions, and with that, we would like to reserve the balance of our time for any questions that may come up.
Thank you. Colleagues, any questions at this point for Mr. Gregg? Seeing none, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And we have Aaron Silvera for the protestants.
Good morning, Ms. Silvera.
Good morning. Good morning, Commissioners, General Counsel, Public Interest Counsel. My name is Erin Silvera. I'm with the Carlton Law Firm, and I represent Jonah Water Special Utility District. This application highlights a gap between what state law requires and what your application requests of your applicants for wastewater permits. There are two deficiencies that we have identified in this process that we've outlined in our briefing. And I just want to touch very quickly on those with you. The first is regarding consent. Texas Water Code Chapter 13.044C requires that the district provide consent for the service that's being provided within its current service area. Jonah Water Special Utility District does not need a CCN to provide water and wastewater service within its district boundaries, and your application process does not request or delve into that particular issue. And because this application is being processed under Texas Water Code 5.557, which requires that all applicable statutory and regulatory requirements be addressed, in this particular case, the application's deficient. The second particular issue is really kind of the bigger picture issue, not just for this application, but for regionalization as a whole. Our governor previously declared that Texas is open for business, and that's happening. And in concert with the old adage that if you build it, they will come, that's happened too. SH 130 has really created a boom of development along that particular corridor. You have a new automobile manufacturing facility. You have the upcoming tech growth that's happening along that corridor. And with that come people and houses. And Jonah is experiencing a significant amount of growth weekly, applications weekly for new developments. Houses are coming in. Jonah's ready to provide that service. They're ready to provide the water service. They've been planning for this. But with the additional water comes wastewater. And that Jonah has been planning for as well. So when you look at the disparity between what's happening on the bigger picture planning side for water versus what's happening on wastewater, you end up with this potential peppering of little tiny wastewater permits for individual neighborhoods that are going to be spread across that area over time. This is not in concert with the state's goal for regionalization. The way that our regulations and the way that the state law lays out, it really is guided with the notion that regionalization should be the focus. One of the things that was not addressed in this particular application is Chapter 49 of the Water Code, when you have a regionalization issue that affects a district. We would posit to you that that analysis should be done before this application is approved. I stand ready to answer any questions that you may have. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Ms. Silvera. I have none. Colleagues, any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
We have the ED.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, General Counsel, and Public Interest Counsel. I'm Aubrey Puelka with the Environmental Law Division. With me today is Deba Dutta and Sonia Buya with the Water Quality Division. The Executive Director agrees with the Administrative Law Judge's conclusions and findings as referenced in her proposal for decision. The Administrative Law Judge found that the draft permit complies with the state's regionalization policy and would be protective of water quality. There is no evidence presented that rebutted the prima facie demonstration that the draft permit meets all state and federal legal and technical requirements, and that a permit issued consistent with the draft permit would protect human health and safety, the environment, and physical property. Therefore, in the absence of such testimony, the ALJ recommended that the Commission issue the draft permit and adopt all findings of fact and conclusions of law contained in the proposed order. The Executive Director respectfully recommends, with the correction noted in the ED's exceptions to the PFD, that the Commission adopt the ALJ's findings of fact and conclusions of law, grant the application, and issue the draft permit without changes. Thank you, and we are available for questions.
Thank you. I have none. Any questions, colleagues? Mr. Wayne, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, General Counsel, and the Executive Director's attorneys and staff. For the record, I'm Sheldon Wayne with Office of Public Interest Counsel. With respect to the Commission's consideration of the proposal for decision and the related record in this matter, after examining the evidence and the argument presented, OPIC maintains the position taken in our closing brief that the application should be granted. On the applicant's request, this matter was directly referred for a hearing on whether the application complies with all applicable statutory and regulatory requirements. OPIC found that the applicant met its burden of proof, and the preponderance of evidence in the record shows that the application complies with applicable legal and technical requirements and would protect human health and safety, the environment, and physical property. Therefore, we respectfully recommend adopting the ALJ's proposal for decision, incorporating the minor date correction as recommended by the Executive Director in her exceptions letter, and issuing the draft permit as recommended by the ALJ. Thank you, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wayne, and I am seeing none. So, Mr. Gregg, you have an opportunity for 4.5 minutes of rebuttal.
Mr. Chairman, I do not have any rebuttal. I will simply say that all the issues raised by protesters in this matter were addressed and properly considered by the ALJ and the PFD before you. So we think that was properly analyzed, both those issues, consent and regionalization, and we would again urge of issuance of the permit. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Colleagues, I do not see a basis for us to upset the ALJ's findings of fact and conclusions of law. I agree that consent was not required on these facts. I believe that the applicant met its burden on the remaining issues, being water quality and regionalization. And pending your thoughts, I'm certainly ready to adopt a proposed order with the correction noted on the date to finding of fact 16.
I'm in agreement.
Likewise.
I'll attempt a motion then. I would move that we adopt the ALJ's proposed order as modified by the ALJ's letter dated January 5th, 2024. Issue new TIPD's permit number WQ00160080001 to R040063 LP and adopt the executive director's response to comments.
I second the motion.
The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Ms. Smith, when you're ready, please call the next item.
Item number 2 is the consideration of the proposal for decision and proposed order concerning the application by Civitas at Buda LLC for new TPDES permit number WQ00161540001. The order of presentation will be the applicant, protestants collectively, the ED, and then OPIC. Each party will have 5 minutes of oral argument time. The applicant may reserve a portion of its time for rebuttal as it bears the burden of proof. And we have Mr. Gregg for the applicant.
Good morning again.
Again, good morning. Peter Gregg with Gregg Law PC, representing the applicant Civitas at Buda in this matter. Similar to the previous matter, we believe this one is fairly straightforward. Protestants did bring arguments to the ALJ, but the ALJ fully considered those arguments. Similar to the previous matter, this is one where, again, staff, applicant, and OPUC all agreed that the ALJ issued a proper proposal for decision recommending that the permit be issued. With that, I'll reserve the balance of my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no questions, thank you, sir.
We have Emily Rogers. She will be doing the first portion of the argument for the protestants, and then Lauren Alexander will be going next.
Good morning, Ms. Rogers.
Good morning. I'm Emily Rogers for the record, and I represent the Guadalupe Blanco River Authority in this matter. GBRA again requests that this agency honor the goals and recommendations made as part of the Plum Creek Watershed Protection Plan. GBRA joined more than 30 local, state, and federal partners, including this agency, to develop the plan. Because of that plan, EPA determined that the requirements in the plan would result in standard attainment for Plum Creek and thus remove the creek from the 303D list. The plan recommends that new wastewater discharge permits have a minimum of a 5521 effluent set. By issuing permits that don't meet this requirement, this agency undermines the efforts of the partners that worked on a continuous basis to try to improve the water quality in the watershed. The plan and its recommendations should factor into this agency's decisions regarding permits it issues. This is particularly true for a permit for which there is no site-specific data collected or considered, and where the modeling contains inaccurate assumptions that predict a more favorable impact of the discharge on the water quality. With no follow-up after the permit is issued and the discharge begins, there's no guarantee that the effluent limits will be protective of the water quality. It will be left to the Plum Creek Watershed Partnership to take the additional steps to try to bring the creek into compliance with the standards, while permittees like Civitas are awarded and rewarded with less stringent permits. Help the Plum Creek Watershed Partnership by requiring the ED to consider the plan and making effluent limit recommendations, and by requiring new applicants to comply with the plan. With that, I will pass my time. If you have any additional questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Rogers. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Lauren Alexander with the law firm of Paralis, Allman, and Ice, and we represent two of the affected landowners, Mr. and Mrs. Kolodzi. This is a special case because if constructed, the Civitas plant would have a real impact on not only the Kolodzis, but also the broader community in Kyle, Texas. The Kolodzis own over 200 plus acres down gradient of the discharge. They generously offer their property and the event center located on their property as a free gathering and fundraising space for several groups in the community. The property also includes 4 large bodies of water that the community uses for fishing. The Commission referred the issue of regionalization in this case. There cannot be a fair consideration of regionalization without a thorough cost analysis. That did not happen here. Your staff attempted to get from the applicant a cost analysis where an administrative notice of deficiency was sent on May 2nd, 2022, that it specifically instructed the applicant to provide a cost comparison of connecting to the GBRA system in lieu of building a brand new facility on the Civitas site. The applicant responded with an estimation that connecting to the GBRA facility would cost approximately $2,700 to $4,500 more than constructing a new facility on the Civitas site. But this cost analysis did not include any detail or explanation justifying that range of hypothetical costs. At the very least, the executive director should have required further justification for the applicant's failure to consider the GBRA facility as a viable alternative. The TCEQ regionalization policy online states that commissioners have previously considered, quote, lack of detailed cost analysis and comparison when evaluating the adequacy of the ED's regionalization analysis. Furthermore, the cost-benefit analysis did not make any reference at all to the environmental benefits that might be had from consolidating wastewater operations. Consideration of the full range of costs and benefits might spare the Kolodzi's property from turning into an odorous industrial neighborhood. The ultimate granting of this permit would impact not only the Kolodzi's, but also the broader community who enjoy and depend on their land. The Commissioner's tolerance of such a threadbare cost analysis only encourages other applicants to be dismissive of the regionalization policy. Thank you, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Alexander. And I'm seeing none, so thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to the ED again.
Good morning again.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, General Counsel, and Public Interest Counsel. I am Aubrey Puelka with the Environmental Law Division. With me today is Deba Dutta with the Water Quality Division. Regarding the 3 agreed issues, the Executive Director supports the Administrative Law Judge's conclusions for all 3 issues. The ALJ found that the draft permit is protective of water quality in accordance with applicable Texas water quality standards, complies with applicable requirements regarding location standards, and is consistent with the state's regionalization policy. Therefore, in the absence of evidence that the draft permit violates a specifically applicable state or federal requirement, the ALJ recommended that the Commission issue the draft permit and adopt all findings of fact and conclusions of law contained in the proposed order. With the corrections as noted in the ED's exceptions to the PFD, the Executive Director respectfully recommends that the Commissioners adopt the ALJ's findings of fact and conclusions of law, grant the application, and issue the draft permit without changes. Thank you, and we are available for questions.
Thank you. Seeing none, appreciate that.
We have OPIC next.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, General Counsel, and Executive Directors, attorneys, and staff. For the record, I'm Jennifer Jamison on behalf of OPIC. OPIC agrees with issuance of this permit as outlined by the ALJ's proposal for decision and as amended by the exception letter. Specifically, OPIC agrees that applicant and ED witnesses credibly testified that the application was reviewed in accordance with TCEQ rules, standards, and procedures. The evidence shows that ED witness Ms. Robertson used National Hydrography dataset flow lines in combination with recent historical aerial imagery from Google Earth to appropriately measure Elm Creek stream reaches, as well as best professional judgment when estimating the depth for SCS Reservoir 16. OPIC found that the ED's explanation for modeling large reservoirs, that is, dividing them into subsections of roughly 10 acres apiece and then modeling individual subportions, was an appropriate methodology that's in compliance with TCEQ's SOPs. Further, OPIC agrees with the ALJ's contention that the ED used sufficiently conservative DO modeling inputs and that protestants failed to show that their alternate model would yield a result that's not in compliance with TCEQ rules and regulations. Next, as outlined in our closing brief, OPIC agrees with applicants' contention that the Plum Creek Watershed Protection Plan represents a voluntary agreement and as such is not binding or subject to regulatory enforcement. That said, based on the evidence presented, OPIC maintains that the limits in the draft permit are consistent with applicable water quality standards. This position is further supported by the fact that the application and related analysis documents were submitted to EPA for approval and the EPA approved the draft permit effluent limits. Finally, with respect to regionalization, OPIC agrees with the ALJ's conclusion that the applicant met all pertinent statutory requirements and that the ED's review of the application was sufficient with respect to this issue. The evidence shows that applicant provided correspondence with an existing facility within a 3-mile vicinity, as well as information regarding whether the facility had sufficient capacity and willingness to accept the additional wastewater per statutory requirements. OPIC notes that neither protestant presented any pre-filed testimony challenging applicant's prima facie demonstration on regionalization, though evidence was presented upon cross-examination of ED witnesses. Ultimately, OPIC agrees with the ALJ that applicant has met its burden regarding this issue. In sum, OPIC agrees with the ALJ's recommendation that the Commission adopt the proposed order as amended by the exceptions letter and issue the draft permit without modification. Thank you, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Jameson. Colleagues, any questions? Seeing none. Mr. Gregg, you again have 4.5 minutes for a rebuttal.
And I will hope to take no more than 30 seconds of that, Chairman. 4 quick issues. First, the Plum Creek Groundwater Protection Plan. That's something that has been brought before the commissioners twice now. The commissioners have made taken a definitive position on that it is in fact voluntary, consistent with the position taken by the parties here. In terms of the assertion by GBRA that the modeling was inaccurate and that localized conditions were not considered, that conflicts with the evidence and the consideration of that evidence as set forth in the PFD. Regarding Ms. Alexander's position about the cost analysis, a cost analysis was requested, cost analysis was provided, the cost analysis satisfied staff, the cost analysis was evaluated by the administrative law judge, and the administrative law judge deemed that to be sufficient and adequate under applicable rules. Finally, there is a suggestion of an odorous industrial neighborhood coming as a result of this application. I'm not sure where that comes from. This is a small residential community, so any suggestion otherwise I think is inaccurate and incorrect. With that, I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. Commissioner Janeke, you have a question on your face.
Mr. Gregg, I did have one very simple question, and I'd just ask if you could speak generally to what the reasoning in proceeding and seeking these limits versus, was it a matter of cost versus the limits that would have been required in the plan? And it's just my curiosity at a very high level.
At a very high level, it is cost. Once you get down to a certain level, the cost becomes exponential. And so I believe that would be the most accurate answer, is it becomes very, very difficult to justify it economically. And the second point is it's simply unnecessary. We recognize and appreciate the groundwater protection plan, but this is not a discharge that is going to get to that area, much less impact the area.
I appreciate that answer. I've been reminded it's important for us to remain in the record. I believe your answer was general enough to do so. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. Colleagues, again, I don't see a reason to change the ALJ's or second guess the ALJ's findings of fact. I do have just one small amendment to a conclusion of law, but generally I'm comfortable with where the ALJ landed on the modeling geometry on the voluntary Plum Creek Watershed Protection Plan, the anti-degradation review, regionalization, as well as transcript costs. With respect to nuisance odors, just for clarity, I think I would like to add a finding of fact to indicate that the applicant meets the nuisance odor requirements by way of a buffer zone. I'm not sure that was quite clear enough. And I would also strike a reference to 30 TAC, Section 217.38 at conclusion of Law 12. That provision is a design criteria standard rather than a permitting standard, and I just want to emphasize that those are separate processes. And then I'd also make the minor corrections indicated in the executive director's exceptions. And if that's agreeable, I'm happy to make a motion to that effect.
That's agreeable with me.
Likewise.
All right. Colleagues, I move that we adopt the administrative law judge's proposed order with the 3 amendments to findings of fact numbers 11, 15, and 19, proposed by the executive director in her exceptions and agreed to by the ALJ in her January 9, 2024 reply to exceptions, and with the following further changes. Add new finding of fact 48.5 stating, quote, "The application presented adequate buffer zone distances from the proposed treatment units to the applicant's property boundary in compliance with 30 TAC Section 309.13E," end quote. And modify conclusion of law number 12 to remove the reference to 30 TAC Section 217.38 from the conclusion in order to emphasize that the design criteria approval process is a separate and subsequent process to the TIPD's permitting action. I further move that we issue TIPD's permit number WQ00161540001 in the form of the draft permit submitted by the executive director and adopt the executive director's response to comments.
I second.
The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Ms. Smith, when you're ready, please call the next item. So instead of going to the next motion, we actually have a correction on the first item, and so I'll let Ms. Smith call the caption, and then we'll try to sort that out.
So we're going to go back to item number 1, the consideration of the ALJ's proposal for a decision and order concerning the application by RO40062 LP. And note that when the commission first said the order, the wrong company name was used because of the 2 versus the 3. And
Do you want me to state that on the record or remake the motion?
I think we need to, just belt and suspenders, make the motion again with the correct regulated entity name.
And we believe that the regulated entity name was incorrect in a portion of the order too. So we're going to recommend that be corrected in this motion as well.
Do you? Okay, I'll give it a whirl. Going back to item number 1, I would move that we adopt the ALJ's proposed order as modified by the ALJ's letter dated January 5th, 2024, as well as correcting the applicant's name and ordering provision number 1 of the proposed order. issue the TIPD's permit number WQ001-6008001 to RO40062 LP and adopt the executive director's response to comments.
I second the motion.
I'm going to stare long and hard at our general counsel before I call the vote. Okay.
We're good now,
The
thanks.
motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Ms. Smith, when you're ready, we'll begin moving in forward rather than reverse, and I'll ask you to call item 3.
Item number 3 is the application by Corix Utilities Incorporated for a major amendment to TIPD's permit number WQ 00139-77001. The parties have been notified that the commissioners will not take oral argument but may ask questions. I'd like to note for the record that Commissioner Lindley will be abstaining from the vote in this matter, and those who have signed in will be noted for the record.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. So I'll focus my comments this direction. And also for those of you who are not familiar with our process, Chapter 55 of TCQ's rules provides a 2-part analysis for considering requests for contested cases. Part 1 is, let me provide a little bit more detail on this. Part 1 has to do with whether or not a party is affected and is entitled to a hearing request. So we consider whether the requesters have met both procedural and substantive requirements, and then assuming at least one requester meets the requirements, we then consider which issues to refer for hearing. So we're looking in the first instance for affected persons, and if there are any, which issues are referred. Requesters who are affected in a manner different from the general public and who make timely comments and timely hearing requests that are relevant and material to the application and who express those concerns, I'm repeating myself now, in timely requests are entitled to a hearing. As to associations, they can have standing if, in addition, they show that their interests are germane to the organization's purpose, and the association identifies at least one member who would have standing in their own right. And Commissioner Janeka, we have 2 requests on this item. The first one is environmental stewardship. Their purpose is generally to protect and conserve the environment. Environmental stewardship has identified Richard Martin as a member who would have standing in his own right. Mr. Martin resides more than 8 miles from the proposed discharge and I believe is not affected in a manner different from the general public with respect to his residence. However, the association alleges a recreational interest as the basis for Mr. Martin's standing. The request states that Mr. Martin has fished in that general reach of the Colorado River for more than 50 years, and that he fishes an area a little more than a mile from the discharge point 2 to 3 times a month. And he expresses concerns about the adverse impacts of this potential permit to the fish population, which is an interest protected by the laws under which this application is considered. So I agree with the executive director and OPIC that Mr. Martin's concerns are distinguishable in regularity and particularity from members of the general public, such that his membership would support standing for environmental stewardship. So I would grant not his request, but rather the request by environmental stewardship based on his membership. Okay. The second request comes from an individual, and that's Mr. Ambrose. Mr. Ambrose resides more than 3 miles from the facility. He may have some other property interests in the area, but none were shown to be within 1.5 miles of the facility. And given the nature and quantity of the proposed discharge, I don't believe Mr. Ambrose has shown that he's affected in a manner different from the general public with respect to those property-based interests. He also expresses an interest based on his daughter's attendance at a 6-week summer camp at a state park adjacent to the facility. And in my view, that interest is not distinguishable in regularity and particularity from those of the general public. So again, I agree with the executive director and OPIC that Mr. Ambrose is not an affected person.
I'll let you finish your thoughts.
Yeah, so let me pause there because that's all I have to say about, at this point, about the parties.
I appreciate your laying out how you view it. I'm holding the view that I'd support finding both requesters to be affected in this analysis. I agree with you. Starting with environmental stewardship, I think the member Richard Martin is affected based on his fishing on the Wilbarger Bend area of the Colorado River. Mr. Martin's been fishing a little over a mile downstream from the discharge point 2 to 3 times a month for the past 50 years, and he intends to continue fishing there going forward. Based on the size of the discharge, the location where Mr. Martin fishes, along with the frequency and extensive historical recreational use, in my mind, I think he is affected differently than a member of the general public. I also believe that Mr. Ambrose is affected differently than the general public based on his daughter's significant recreational use of McKinney Ruffs Park, which is in close proximity to the facility. Mr. Ambrose's daughter attended summer camp at the park every weekday in 2023 for 6 weeks, which is half a child's summer. While at camp, she participated in outdoor recreational activities, and her father is concerned that her enjoyment of the camp will be lessened by the odors from the increased discharge when she goes back to camp in 2024. Based on the location and proximity of McKinney Ruffs to the facility and Mr. Ambrose's daughter's prior and future use of the park, I think Mr. Ambrose is also affected differently than a member of the general public. I also think that Mr. Ambrose and his family's regular recreational use of the Wilbarger Bend area of the Colorado River make him affected differently than the general public. That said, I am acknowledging the vote count and the necessity to take action on the permit. I'm comfortable granting effectiveness for environmental stewardship and Mr. Martin, Richard Martin, and will trust that Mr. Ambrose, as he's participated in the process up till now, will be aware of his opportunities to make his case further down the process. So I'm comfortable voting with you in how you laid out your view of the parties.
Okay. Why don't we do this? Just to come a little bit more your direction, why don't we refer Mr. Ambrose to SOA for an effectiveness determination?
I love it.
Does that work? Okay.
Perfect.
All right. Commissioner Janeka, I move that we grant the hearing request of environmental stewardship, that we refer the application to SOA for a contested case hearing on the following issues. Issue A, whether the draft permit is protective of water quality, including the protection of the health of the requesters and the requesters' families, the existing uses of receiving waters and groundwater in the area in accordance with applicable regulations, including the Texas Surface Water Quality Standards in 30 Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 307. Issue B, whether the commission should deny or alter the terms and conditions of the draft permit based on consideration of need under Texas Water Code Section 26.0282 and the general policy to promote regional or area-wide systems under Texas Water Code Section 26.081. Issue C, whether the draft permit complies with the applicable requirements to abate and control nuisance odors as set forth in 30 Texas Administrative Code, Section 309.13E. Issue D, whether the applicant substantially complied with applicable public notice requirements. Issue E, whether the application is accurate and complete. Issue F, whether the applicant's compliance history or technical capabilities raise any issues regarding the applicant's ability to comply with the material terms of the permit that warrant denying or altering the terms of the draft permit. I further move that we refer Chapman Edward Ambrose Sr.'s hearing request to SOA for an effectiveness determination, that we set a hearing duration of 180 days from the preliminary hearing until the proposal for decision is issued, and I further move that we deny the request for reconsideration.
I second the motion.
The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Thank you, Commissioner. And Ms. Smith, when you're ready, I'll ask you to please call the next item.
Item number 4 is the application by the City of Marble Falls for new TCEQ permit number WQ001-623-4001. The parties have been notified that the commissioners will not take oral argument but may ask questions, and those who have signed in will be noted for the record.
All right. Call Colleagues, we have a single request on this item. It's by Will Fowler III, who owns property adjacent to the proposed facility and who raises concerns that are relevant and material to the application. I would grant his request and refer the following issues to SOA. First, whether the draft permit is protective of water quality by preventing discharge to surface waters. And second, whether it complies with the applicable siting, buffer zone, and effluent storage requirements.
I'm in agreement.
Likewise. I move that we grant the hearing request of Will Fowler III, that we refer the application to SOA for a contested case hearing on the following issues: whether the draft permit is protective of water quality by preventing wastewater effluent from discharging into surface waters, and whether the draft permit complies with applicable siting, buffer zone, and effluent storage to protect against over-application and runoff of treated effluent from irrigation areas as set forth in 30 Texas Administrative Code Chapter 309. And further move we set a hearing duration of 180 days from the date of the preliminary hearing until the proposal for decision is issued.
A second.
The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Ms. Smith, when you're ready, please call the next item.
Item number 5 is the application by Macedonia Asset LLC for new TIPD's permit number WQ00161820001. The parties have been notified that the commissioners will not take oral argument but may ask questions, and those who have signed in will be noted for the record.
So colleagues, again, we have a two-part analysis for considering requests for contested cases on TIPD's application. Part 1 is about who gets a hearing, and Part 2 is about which issues are referred. Requesters who are affected in a manner different from the general public and who make timely comments articulating personal concerns that are relevant and material to the application and who express those concerns in a timely hearing request are entitled to a hearing. And we have 9 requests on this item. I would grant 3 of them. Mr. Kramer and Ms. Hamala own properties on the discharge route near the proposed discharge point, and Ms. Gallion owns property less than a quarter mile of the proposed facility. All 3 requesters raised relevant and material concerns in timely comments and hearing requests, so I would grant their requests. The remaining requesters own property a considerable distance upstream of the proposed facility, or they failed to articulate a relevant and material issue, or they live too far from the facility, given its relatively modest discharge volume, to be affected in a manner different from the general public. So I would deny those remaining requests. Let me pause there.
I'm in agreement.
Likewise.
All right, moving on to the issues. I would refer 2 issues: whether the draft permit is protective of water quality, including human health, wildlife, and wildlife habitat, and whether it meets the agency's requirements for nuisance odors. And I would also allow 180 days for this hearing.
I'm in agreement, and I would recommend a referral to ADR as well.
Great.
I will attempt a motion then. I would move that we grant the hearing requests of Steve Kramer, Carol Gallion, and Barbara Hamala, refer the application to SOA for a contested case hearing on the following issues with a concurrent referral to the Alternative Dispute Resolution Program. Issue A, whether the draft permit is protective of water quality, including the protection of human health, wildlife, and wildlife habitat in accordance with applicable regulations, including the Texas Surface Water Quality Standards and 30 Texas Administrative Code Chapter 307. And B, whether the draft permit adequately addresses nuisance odors in accordance with 30 Texas Administrative Code 309.13, and that we set a hearing duration of 180 days from the date of the preliminary hearing until the proposal for decision is issued.
I second the motion.
The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Ms. Smith, when you're ready, please call the next item.
Item 6 is the application by Lind Incorporated for authorization to construct a new wastewater treatment facility. The parties have been notified that there will be an opportunity for presentations limited to 5 minutes for each party. The applicant, Lind, should speak first, followed by the ED and then OPIC. The applicant may reserve time for rebuttal. And I believe we have Mike Ashton here for the applicant.
Good morning, Mr. Ashton.
Morning. Chairman and members of the commission, my name is Mike Ashton. I'm Government Affairs Manager for Lindy. I'm based out of Houston. I'm thankful for the opportunity to comment this morning in the Commissioner's consideration of the Lindy application for the authorization to construct. I can appreciate this is an unusual request, but the construction of the wastewater treatment facilities is an integral component of the overall clean hydrogen facility that Lindy is undertaking in Jefferson County. A timely completion of the overall facility construction and on-time startup will be critical for continued investment in the local community, and any delays could impact procurement and employment for the Lindy project. Lindy is a leading global industrial gases and engineering company. The company serves a variety of end markets such as chemicals and energy, food and beverage, electronics, and other industries. Lindy's industrial gases and technologies are used in countless applications, including production of clean hydrogen and carbon capture systems critical to the energy transition. Globally, Lindy has the largest liquid hydrogen capacity and distribution system in the world. This has positioned Lindy in the forefront of the energy transition. In the local region, Lindy has a strong presence in the hydrogen supply chain. Lindy's existing hydrogen system consists of over 15 hydrogen production sources, 350 miles of hydrogen pipelines that run from Sweeney, Texas, to Lake Charles, Louisiana, and the world's first high-purity hydrogen storage cavern located near Mount Bellevue, Texas. The current project before you today is a one-of-a-kind for Texas. As authorized by Lindy's recently issued air permit, Lindy has begun construction of a new clean hydrogen facility that would utilize Lindy's carbon capture technology. This would allow for the capture of greenhouse gas emissions to be safely sequestered underground. Our new hydrogen production complex would consist of 2 hydrogen production trains, 1 air separation unit, the carbon dioxide removal system, and supporting utilities. This investment would create an estimated 1,200 jobs during the construction phase and 38 permanent positions at the site. The production distribution of the clean hydrogen will be used to produce ammonia, but may also be utilized by refining and petrochemical customers across the U.S. Gulf Coast. This new facility will consist of a carbon capture system that would capture and sequester more than 1.7 million metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions produced from the process per year. Lindy feels strongly that this project creates the foundation for a viable clean hydrogen market with future hydrogen hub connection opportunities. As these projects come together, we can look forward to making significant headway in supporting the effort to address climate change. Not only will the Lindy project help to decarbonize the region with the production and uses of clean energy, but we also use several economic benefits as well. The proposed project will produce approximately 300,000 tons per year of purified hydrogen. The project's total estimated cost is expected to be around $1.8 billion. This investment would generate an estimated $75 million of tax benefits for the local county over the first 15 years of the project. Additionally, the project's development and construction activity would inject an estimated $2.3 billion into the local area's economy by supporting over 1,500 direct, indirect, and induced jobs during the construction phase. Air permits for the facility have been reviewed and issued by the TCEQ. During the air permit review, no comments were received. On September 8 of last year, Lindy applied for TIPD's permit to authorize the discharge of treated processed wastewater, utility wastewater, and stormwater generated at the industrial site by the production of the hydrogen. The application has been declared administratively complete and is undergoing technical review. To date, TCEQ has received no comments on our TIPD's permit application. Lindy understands that an approval to construct wastewater treatment facilities is separate and apart from the TIPD's permit and does not in any way obligate the TCEQ to issue a discharge permit for the project. Lindy accepts that a final permit and limits included could require the project to modify or upgrade the wastewater treatment facility to achieve final permit requirements, and these changes will be at Lindy's financial risk. Given the uniqueness of the project, Lindy attempted to engage with the EPA, seeking clarity about the applicability of effluent guideline limitations to the wastewaters produced. EPA did not provide a response at any point during the pre-application or application development process. This lack of clarity resulted in the delay of the completion and submission of our permit application. Additionally, significant study was required to conduct a thorough review of the discharge locations would be allowed by the U.S. Army Corps. To conclude, the construction of the wastewater treatment facilities will be an integral component of the overall Greenfield construction project with commencement of early works, including pre-construction pilings and foundations scheduled for early 2024. Lindy hereby requests the TCEQ Commissioners to consider and approve construction of the wastewater treatment facility and associated components so that overall construction can continue without interruption. Thank you for your time, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ashton. I have none. Colleagues, any questions?
No, thank you.
Seeing none. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, General Counsel, and Public Interest Counsel. My name is Cole Malley, and I'm here on behalf of the Executive Director from the Environmental Law Division. With me today is Michael Sunderland from the Water Quality Division. Lindy Inc. has requested authorization to construct a TPDS facility, for which they have applied September of 2023. This facility would authorize the discharge of treated wastewater at a volume not to exceed 1.67 million gallons of water per day. No comments have been received regarding this application. The ED recommends Lindy's request to construct wastewater facility be approved. Lindy has provided sufficient justification for obtaining authorization to construct the facility by explaining that the authorization is necessary for reasonable and efficient construction of the Greenfield construction project. Lindy further acknowledges that should the Commission grant the request, it does not guarantee the TPDS permit will be issued, nor does it grant them the right to discharge. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malley. Colleagues, any questions for ED staff?
No.
Seeing none. All right, let's go next to you, Mr. Wayne.
Yes, thank you, and good morning again, Chairman, Commissioners, General Counsel, and the Executive Directors, Attorneys, and staff. For the record, I'm Sheldon Wayne with the Office of Public Interest Counsel. After review of the materials associated with this matter, OPIC does not oppose granting Lindy Inc.'s authorization to construct. Lindy has explained that construction activities at the larger chemical manufacturing facility must be carefully sequenced to avoid delay and schedule disruption of the overall project. They emphasize that the project will produce clean hydrogen and provide economic benefits to the region in the form of tax revenues and jobs. Lindy has also acknowledged the limitations and risks of construction prior to a decision being made on their pending TPDES permit application, and demonstrated an alternative need for the facility should a permit not be issued. We note that TCEQ has received no public comments, no hearing requests, and no public meeting requests about the underlying TPDES permits thus far. However, the public comment period remains open. We also note that Lindy Inc. has a compliance history rating of 0.32 with the classification of satisfactory, and the proposed facility itself is currently unclassified. Additionally, our office used the Environmental Protection Agency's EJ, or Environmental Justice Screening web tool to run a community report on the 1 mile area surrounding the proposed site. While we did identify some potential environmental justice concerns, they centered around issues regarding exposure to air pollutants and not to wastewater discharges. Finally, while our office does not oppose issuance of this authorization to construct, we do wish to highlight a few of OPIC's concerns. First, in the event that the underlying TPDES permitting process is extended by a contested case hearing, Lindy's anticipated operational date of June 2025 appears to be ambitious. While we accept Lindy's explanation that the Army Corps of Engineers recently implemented setback zones caused delay in the submittal of its application, we are also mindful of the Commission's previous characterization of these authorizations to construct as requests for extraordinary relief, and their need to be treated as such. Here, it appears that Lindy's request is primarily motivated by their own projected construction timeline. Ideally, we would prefer that the regulated community apply for permitting well in advance of their operational deadlines, dispensing with the need for authorizations to construct, except in the most extreme of circumstances. Second, the TPDES application is still undergoing technical review, meaning that because the draft permits, conditions, and effluent limits have not been established, the applicant must essentially construct the facility based on assumed permit conditions. Relatedly, the public has not yet had a chance to consider or comment on the draft permit. While Lindy has acknowledged these concerns, there's little that can be done to address them, short of earlier submission of the permit application. In sum, while OPIC does not oppose this authorization to construct, we recognize that the Commission has historically sought to discourage these requests and decline them absent a compelling reason. Though we do not oppose this request, we are not so sure that Lindy has provided the Commission with such a compelling reason. Further, given the lack of public participation opportunities on an authorization to construct, OPIC believes that the public interest is well served by setting the approval bar appropriately high. Therefore, in this instance, while we do not oppose approval of the authorization, we also do not go so far as to support it. Thank you, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wayne. Colleagues, any questions?
No questions. I really appreciate those points you made, and I'm grateful that OPIC added to the record on this one.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Ashton, if you'd like to add anything else, you have an opportunity to do that. Okay, we think we're good. All right. Colleagues, here's my view. I think given the economic significance of this project and its importance in terms of developing new energy sources, that it outweighs our general posture of disfavoring applications to construct prior to permit issuance. So I would support the application.
I'm comfortable granting it as well.
I'm also comfortable moving forward, although I do have to note I share the second concern Mr. Wayne raised, perceived pressure upon our technical staff in the eyes of the public. That's my biggest concern about this one, and I'll be very curious to and hopeful that the community's tolerance to date of your activities and the new exciting opportunities that this poses for our state and region. I sincerely hope plans go as well as I can, and I'd encourage you to engage very enthusiastically with the public to help avoid any potential added delays in terms of a SOA hearing. I can make a motion.
Great.
I move that we grant the application of Lindy Inc. for an authorization to construct and issue the Executive Director's proposed order.
A second.
The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. Ms. Smith, when you're ready, please call the next items.
That takes us to our enforcement docket, which are items 7 through 18, and the Executive Director's staff is here to present these matters.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, General Counsel, and Public Interest Counsel. For the record, my name is Michael Parrish of the Enforcement Division, and with me today are Amy Sedemeyer, also of the Enforcement Division, and Gitanjali Yadav of the Litigation Division, representing the Executive Director. Pending before you are items 7 through 18. The total assessed administrative penalties are $281,595, with $37,434 deferred, $55,060 applied towards supplemental environmental projects, and $189,101 to the general revenue. We respectfully request approval of these items and are available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Parrish. I have none. Colleagues, any questions? Ms. Smith, has anybody signed in to speak?
On item 9, we have individuals who have signed in and indicated that they don't wish to speak unless the commission has questions. And on item 16, we have Kelly Holcomb signed in. And
Mr. Holcomb
sorry,
is
sorry.
here. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Chairman Nerman and Commissioners. My name is Kelly Holcomb, General Manager, Angelina Natchez River Authority. I am here today to use this forum and this particular matter before you to highlight a growing issue that my Board of Directors and I see in our portion of the state of Texas, East Texas. The River Authority has a territorial jurisdiction of approximately 8,500 square miles, consisting of all or part of 17 counties. And that particular topic or that particular issue is the number of failed or failing water systems that we see in our part of the world. I'm sure.
Mr. Holcomb?
Yes, ma'am.
Since this item is just regarding the enforcement action, your remarks need to be confined to that. We have a public comment session coming up at the end of the agenda. If you have more general remarks about a policy issue that you'd like to highlight, I think it would be better taken up during that item.
Okay.
Do you have anything that you'd like to say about
I do.
item 16
I do.
in particular? Okay, thank you.
First of all, I want to acknowledge Ms. Sedemeier. We spent a lot of time together on the phone and virtual meetings working through some of the procedural matters on this. This particular enforcement action is not unique. I stood in this very same room 25 years ago on a very similar matter to this. We took over this particular water system in July 2022 after a 22-month PUC process, only to be placed under enforcement 3 quarters later. Earlier in 2023. As a part of that process, we worked with Ms. Sedemeier and staff, and I apologize, my frustrations were never with you or your staff. You were nothing but professional and courteous throughout the whole process. I hope I was as well. My frustration was at the procedural matters. Number one, as part of the proposed agreed order, my board of directors was asked to approve an agreed order with a 1-year compliance period for a water quality violation for disinfection byproducts that could not be resolved within that 1-year timeline. And the comment kept coming back, well, you could always petition the executive director for an extension of that. I understand that, and that's well and good. But as a procedural matter, you're asking my board to approve an order that they know they can't comply with from the outset. That was a problem. I'm not sure how much of an issue it was for Ms. Sedemeier, but she was able to get us a 5-year compliance window. Why is that important? That 5-year compliance window is probably not going to be enough. We don't know that. We took over the system in July of 22. We made application in March of 23 for a Water Development Board Drinking Water State Revolving Fund loan. That loan commitment is scheduled to be on the board's agenda sometime in March for approval. We anticipate once we get loan commitment, we're looking at a minimum of 5 years to complete construction. That's how long it takes these processes to work and to actually become compliant. The other issue that this raised, and again, Ms. Sedemeier was very adamant that y'all are working with the delegated authority that you have as part of the EPA's enforcement criteria. And while House Bill 3232 gave y'all another tool in the toolbox to work through that enforcement process at a state level, it doesn't do anything at a federal level. And to be honest, my board of directors and I find it troubling, frustrating that we're here today as a good Samaritan trying to resolve water quality issues, water supply issues in our portion of the basin, having to stand before this body, you the commissioners today, to agree to an order that we had no fault in any way, shape, or form. I understand the procedural matters. We've had those discussions. I would petition you, the commissioners, to review that policy to see if there is a way to initiate discussions.
That's time.
And I'll ask you to finish your thoughts on this item, Mr. Holcomb, and then invite you back. We'll call the public comment session just a little bit, and you can expand on your more general comments not related to this item.
Thank you. That there was some way we could y'all could initiate a process with the EPA to provide an HB 3232 style solution to this problem. I don't know how to do it. I can tell you that our state, East Texas delegation at the state level is willing to step up and help. Congressman Pete Sessions is willing to step up and help. But the truth of the matter is we're not the subject matter experts, y'all are.
Yeah.
And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, sir. I don't have any questions right now.
No, thank you.
Colleagues, any questions? All right, appreciate that. And then, Mr. Holcomb, we'll have you back up in just a little bit for the more generalized comments.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Ms. Smith, are there any other interested persons wishing to address the commission?
No.
Okay, let's turn next to OPIC. Mr. Arthur.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. For the record, I'm Garrett Arthur, TCEQ Public Interest Counsel. OPIC supports adoption of these enforcement orders as presented by ED staff.
Colleagues, I do as well. I'm eager to hear the rest of Mr. Holcomb's presentation and in just a little bit, and really appreciate him being here. But I'm certainly ready to go forward with these items.
I agree.
Likewise.
I would move that we adopt items 7 through 18 as recommended by the executive director.
I second the motion.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Ms. Smith, when you're ready, please call the next items.
That takes us to items 19 through 22. Those are the quadrennial rule reviews for chapters 111, 281, 288, and 331 of 30 Texas Administrative Code. The executive director's staff is here to present these items.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, General Counsel, and Public Interest Counsel. On behalf of the Executive Director, I am Gwen Rico with the General Law Division. Pending before you are items 19 through 22, the adopted rule reviews of 30 Texas Administrative Code Chapter 111, Control of Air Pollution from Visible Emissions and Particulate Matter, Chapter 281, Applications Processing, Chapter 288, Water Conservation Plans, Drought Contingency Plans, Guidelines and Requirements, and Chapter 331, Underground Injection Control. As required by Texas Government Code Section 2001.039, Executive Director staff conducted a rule review of these chapters to determine if the need for the rules within these chapters continue to exist. The proposed notices for the reviews of chapters 281, 288, and 331 were published in the August 11th, 2023 issue of the Texas Register, and the proposed notice for the review of chapter 111 was published in the August 25th, 2023 issue of the Texas Register with 30-day comment periods. No comments were received for these rule reviews. Based on the review of these chapters, the Executive Director has determined that the reasons for the rules in chapters 111, 281, 288, and 331 continue to exist, and changes to the rules identified as part of this rule review process will be addressed in a separate rulemaking action in accordance with the Texas Administrative Procedure Act. In conclusion, we respectfully recommend approval of the adoption of the rule reviews of chapters 111, 281, 288, and 331. Additionally, staff requests authorization to make non-substantive revisions necessary to comply with Texas Register requirements. Thank you. The project managers and staff attorneys assigned to these chapters are here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Rico. I have none. Colleagues, any questions?
No, thank you.
Ms. Smith, has anybody signed in to speak?
No one has signed in on these.
Mr. Arthur?
With the understanding that obsolete rule language in Chapter 111 will be addressed in future rulemaking, OPIC agrees that the reasons for initially adopting the Chapter 111, 281, 288, and 331 rules continue to exist, and we support readoption of the rules in each of these chapters.
Thank you. Colleagues, I agree with that, and think that we should go ahead and readopt and direct the Executive Director to initiate rulemaking to address the obsolete provisions.
I could not agree more. I recognize rockstar engineer Jan Bates from our Radioactive Materials Division, who carried the UIC rules. I was at a in situ mining facility yesterday. Those folks would agree emphatically. Those rules are serving the state of Texas. So I move that we adopt the rule reviews and readopt the rules in 30 Texas Administrative Code Chapters 111, 281, 288, and 331 without amendment as recommended by the Executive Director. The Commission further directs the Executive Director to initiate rulemaking to correct obsolete references and repeal obsolete sections of 30 Texas Administrative Code Chapter 111.
I second.
The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Ms. Smith, I'll ask you to call the next item.
And the next item is our public comment session. The commission may receive comments from the public on any matters within the jurisdiction of the TCEQ in accordance with Texas Water Code Section 5.112. The commission may not hear comments on pending permit matters or pending enforcement matters or any other contested case because they are subject to ex parte prohibitions found in the Texas Government Code. In the interest of time, speakers will be limited to 3 minutes each, with a total time for public comment limited to 1 hour. Please note that the commissioner's discussion of subjects for which public notice has not been given are limited to statements of specific factual response and the recitation of existing policy. So first, we have Kelly Holcomb.
And as you're walking up here, just thanks again for being here, and I'm glad, just luck would have it, on the coin toss, we actually had a public comment session today, so that's fortunate. We can hear your more generalized concerns. The other thing I wanted to let you know is that all three of the commissioners are sensitive to the many challenges facing drinking water systems, and we certainly appreciate your testimony about that here today. So go ahead, sir.
Well, thank you, sir. Again, good morning. The River Authority's jurisdiction is all or part of 17 counties encompassing 8,500 square miles of territorial jurisdiction. By my estimation, there are some 25 or 30 odd systems that are failing or have already failed. You can evidence by the fact that they've been placed in receivership. Many of these, all of these are small rural systems that don't have the resources. They don't have anything. They don't even have full-time staff members. My concern is that oftentimes these same systems that are failing they serve communities that are the least able to absorb the impacts of that failure. What failure looks like for us is a system either can't pay its bills, we start getting phone calls, we try to step in depending on the circumstances, and we take over operation of the system immediately. Then we go through the process to actually acquire it through the PUC process. In doing so, it involves rate increases at some point that they simply cannot afford. For example, this Prairie Grove Utilities, the water system that was on the docket today, we submitted an application to the Texas Water Development Board in March of 23, $7.2 million, Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. It received 70% loan forgiveness, which means that just under 240 customers are having to pay back the remainder of that $2.3 million in loan funds. A $100 water bill is certainly within the realm of possibility in this scenario. That's $100 without any water consumption. These people are hurting. They're going to hurt even more. But when our board of directors and I were faced with this particular issue, we looked at it and said, what do you do? If we don't stand in the gap, no one will. This issue of, I feel personally that the matter of being placed under enforcement based on federal criteria is a disincentive for any other river authority to stand up and do this. There's only 16 of us left in the state. There are very few that are doing this, and a multitude of reasons why, this being one of those. But again, I want to expose the problem because I know this is not the only portion of the state that has this same issue. One of the things that struck me as part of this process is when I began asking questions of staff at the board and at the commission, what is the definition? Does the commission have stats on this? And the answer is no on both counts. The Water Development Board does not, and y'all do not keep detailed stats as I understand it. So in my world, in order to fix the problem, you've got to understand the size and scope of it, and we don't know that information. I'll be happy to entertain any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Holcomb. I have no questions. Any questions?
No, I would just say, thank you to you and your board for trying to help these systems when they need it and when no one else will. So it's a need we do have all over the state, and yeah, we all need to work on it.
Commissioner Janeka?
I echo those comments, and I will suggest the hope that we may be able to solve these needs through a different pathway in terms of the shared national interest on funding some of our utilities infrastructure. I think there is new assistance for technical assistance specifically that our agency was charged with allocating out that addressed a specific need that many of those very rural systems, there may be grants or assistance available, but you need staff to apply and put an application together, and often those grants will not award funds that cover those costs, cover those staff dollars. And I'm grateful at the deluge of new funding and assistance that's posing new challenges, but I'm hopeful that we will be able to continue to work towards this answer. Please don't be discouraged in taking over these systems. I'm grateful that y'all are standing into the gap, and I think that it's a critical need. It's one where you may be bearing some extra costs right now in the short term. I hope we get some champions from our elected officials to remedy and rectify. I suspect, given that these are federal obligations that we're carrying, we would need if not law changes in Austin, perhaps in Washington, D.C., in order to give us the flexibility that y'all really require. But assistance is coming in terms of new technical assistance, new identifying and responding to needs. But thank you for raising the issue.
Yeah, and I guess the only thing I would add, Mr. Holcomb, is let me do this. Let me invite you to call my office, and we can maybe point you to some potential other resources without raising expectations. You may have already kind of gone down these paths and discovered that they're not so easy, but just to make sure that we're not missing anything. And then beyond that, all I can say is that I share your frustration. I mean, we see this, across. We have thousands and thousands of small drinking water systems, and their challenges are manifold. And just like you, we see a lot of them in chronic noncompliance due to no fault of their own for a whole variety of reasons. And I share your frustration, and if we can point you to some additional resources, we're happy to do that.
Thank you. We're looking forward to the funding that's coming down. Unfortunately, it's going to take a year or two to sort through that and to organize that process, and we're looking forward to that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate your testimony. Ms. Smith, is anybody else signed in to address the commission?
Yes, we have Vanessa Henez online.
Ms. Henez, good morning.
Hi, how are you doing? Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Go ahead when you're ready.
All right, great. So yes, my name is Vanessa Henez. As a concerned resident, I'm deeply troubled by the recent enforcement action taken by the TCEQ regarding WS Campus Holdings, which was heard on January 10th, 2024.
And Ms. Henez,
Ms. Henez?
Yes.
Sorry.
During this public comment session, we can't discuss enforcement cases, specific enforcement cases.
Okay, and so that involves prior enforcement cases?
It could potentially, yes, because they could potentially still be appealed.
Well, then I guess I will just comment on the fact that for over 2 years, I've been trying to engage with TCEQ. I've asked for accommodations regarding my disabilities. For over 2 years, I have supplied an unbelievable amount of comments, communicated with over 42 email conversations with TCEQ staff regarding the hazardous waste management facility, which has been permitted to go up in the 100-year flood zone. And basically there's a big problem I was told that public comment and, the showing of these sort of violations was important to the TCEQ. And I stand here today to tell you that it's not, because I've been saying the same thing for 2 years to Melissa Cordell, to Lillian Butler, to Lori Wilson, Sheldon Wayne, Joel Anderson, Elijah Grundy, Casey Gunrit, Garrett Arthur, and others for 2 years, and supporting evidence and every documentation, pictures, videos, everything, and still nothing is done. And still the entity continues to destroy the land and the environment and continues to be in violation of federal and state laws. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Henez. We appreciate you joining us this morning. Ms. Smith, is anybody else signed up to offer comments?
No one else has signed up.
All right. Then I'll ask you to call the next items.
The next items are items 24 through 27. Sorry. The commission, and these are items for closed session. The commission will meet in closed session in room 4209 in building F at, should we say 11 o'clock? At 11 o'clock as permitted by the Open Meetings Act, including Texas Government Code sections 551071 and 551074, to take up and consider matters pursuant to items 24 through 27 as posted and noticed. This meeting, I'm going to step on your toes.
The time is 10:48. We stand in recess.
The commission met in room 4209 of Building F for closed session from 11:05 a.m. until 12:24 p.m. on item numbers 24 and 27, as posted in notice pursuant to Texas Government Code, Section 551074. No action was taken. The agenda stands adjourned. The time is 12:42.